grateful for General McChrystal's remarkable career in uniform. But war is bigger than any one man or woman, whether a private, a general, or a president. And as difficult as it is to lose General McChrystal, I believe that it is the right decision for our national security.
That was the president making a change at the top of the Afghanistan military command. General Stanley McChrystal and his staff roundly bashing the administration in a magazine article, the president effectively firing him as a result. With us now on a Freedom Watch exclusive, General McChrystal's West Point classmate who thinks the general was being too kind about the U.S. strategy in Afghanistan, retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor. Colonel, you are a Ph.D. in political philosophy. You are a graduate of West Point. You are a lifelong member of the military until you retired. You were one of the architects of Gulf War I. The military has been your life. Should General McChrystal have been fired?
I'm afraid so.
Why is that?
The president really didn't have any choice. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is very clear. You cannot disparage the chain of command. You cannot make disparaging remarks about the president, the vice president, his National Security Council staff. It simply isn't done.
Suppose you profoundly disagree with the mission. For example, was General McChrystal's mission, whether it was calculated by the president or calculated by General Petraeus, doomed to failure no matter who's going to run it?
Well, there are some people who would assert that. I think it's important to understand that McChrystal came from a very different background from many of the other officers that we've been dealing with. He came out of the special ops community, and he was suddenly promoted and advanced and rewarded for loyalty to Rumsfeld and loyalty to this war on terror, essentially. Political loyalty.
Did he not deserve the promotion, the 4th star, and did he not deserve this command? You say it was given as a reward.
Well, I think you need to understand something, that your senior officers are very politicized. If you go to Bob Woodward's book, State of Denial, there's a section in there where retired 4-star General Jack Keane is talking to Secretary Gates. This is before President Obama is elected. The discussion is, do you not, Mr. Secretary, want these policies to continue? Do you not want us to continue operating in Iraq and in Afghanistan to press forward along these lines? And Secretary Gates says, well, yes, of course. And then Keane says, well, then you've got to promote people that are reliable, who will go in there and prosecute this thing regardless of whomever is elected.
Regardless of whomever is elected.
Who wins.
Shortly before, the president announced at West Point that he would give General McChrystal about 3/4 of the troops that he wanted. General James Jones, retired 4-star Marine Corps commandant and the president's national security advisor, said there were fewer than 100 al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Was he right? And if he was, does it make sense to send 100,000 troops after 100 people?
No, absolutely not. He was right. And by the way, McChrystal, shortly after he'd taken over, made the point that if there were al-Qaeda anywhere, they were in Pakistan. And we talked about 200 or 300 hardcore al-Qaeda types. But they are currently isolated up in northwest Pakistan. And there is no connection, quite frankly, if you talk to people in the intelligence community, no real connection between this Afghan Taliban, which is backed by part of the Pakistani military for various reasons, and al-Qaeda.
Colonel Macgregor, why are we in Afghanistan?
Well, I think that's a question that our friends on the Hill should have asked. I mean, if you go back to this report that General McChrystal submitted to the president, this is the one that was leaked imprudently, as you'll recollect.
Right. This is the one in which he requested 40 or 50,000 troops.
He didn't write that report. That report was put together for him by people in General Petraeus' staff.
Wait a minute. This is profound news. That report, which was leaked, which so irked the White House, which had General McChrystal's name on it, was not written by him, but was written for him?
Of course. All the generals have things written for them. I mean, General Petraeus will tell you that he did not write this new counterinsurgency document. That he had a staff of officers who wrote it, he reviewed it, ultimately approved it and signed it. That's what 4-star generals do. But the point I'm trying to make is that Petraeus' staff, his supporters, the people that had been with him in Afghanistan promoting the war, they put together this very, in my judgment, strange plan that went well beyond any attacks on al-Qaeda, that went into nation building, institution building, dramatically expanded our resources.
And they put General Stan McChrystal's name on it and leaked it as if it came from him. For what purpose would they do that? To irk their bosses in the White House?
Well, I think you've got to go back to General Keene's conversation with Secretary Gates. There was an interest in forcing the president into a decision. to force him down the road they wanted to go. And they wanted to expand our commitment in Afghanistan.
General McChrystal made some very negative comments about Vice President Biden. We'll put one on the screen. Someone asked about Vice President Biden. Who's that? McChrystal joked about Vice President Biden. An advisor then suggested, Biden? Did you say bite me? Yeah. Now, that's a quote from the Rolling Stone article. I'm quoting it literally. The one that arguably instigated General McChrystal's firing. Is this kind of language amongst senior military officials about their civilian command typical or atypical?
Well, it varies. You know, obviously, you've seen The Wizard of Oz, and you remember little Toto goes over, grabs the curtain, and pulls it back, and suddenly you discover the man behind the curtain.
Right.
I think the American people have gotten a glimpse of what goes on behind the curtain, and it's unfortunate that Stan made these remarks, because I'm sure under normal circumstances he wouldn't have. But I think it's important that we also understand something else. Look, he's accustomed to dealing with journalists who are, number one, largely supportive of the long war on terror.
Right.
And secondly, journalists who want access to write books, puff pieces on the general to make money.
Before I let you go, should we be spending $1 trillion in the Islamic world to import democracy?
Oh, absolutely not. It's a dead end. It's a hopeless endeavor.
Hopeless endeavor.
Absolutely. This is a bottomless pit for our resources. Nothing good is going to come out of it.
Doesn't President Obama know that?
I suspect he has an inkling, but he seems to lack the confidence and the resolve to stand up to it. As I said, he's been forced down this road.
Colonel Douglas Macgregor, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Republicans and Democrats rethinking Afghanistan? Right. Coming up next.